Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a really fascinating topic: how modern workplaces manage to avoid complete catastrophic breakdowns using something called alternative dispute resolution, or ADR. In our complex, fast-paced world, workplace conflict is literally a guarantee. People are going to butt heads, but dragging everyone to court, that absolutely doesn't have to be the default. So let's explore exactly how forward-thinking companies are keeping the peace, protecting their teams, and keeping the whole business running smoothly.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We'll look at when negotiations break down, explain the ADR framework, compare conciliation versus mediation, see ADR in the real world, weigh the pros and cons, and finally, look at the future of industrial peace.
All right, jumping right into Section 1, when negotiations break down and the really high cost of unresolved conflict.
So, I want you to really picture the immediate fallout when dialogue completely fails. What happens on the factory floor or, up in the boardroom when management and workers hit an absolute brick wall? Just imagine a scenario where traditional face-to-face negotiation is completely dead in the water, and neither side is willing to budge even an inch. You can practically cut the tension with a knife, right? And the clock is ticking.
Well, the consequences of hitting that wall are incredibly severe. Unresolved disputes don't just stay neatly boxed into a single department, they spread like wildfire. We're talking costly strikes, lockouts, and endless courtroom battles that literally grind daily productivity to zero. But honestly, even deeper than that financial hit, the foundational trust between employer and employee gets completely shredded. And rebuilding that takes years. Zoom out a bit, and when this happens on a large scale across multiple industries, widespread economic growth takes a massive hit. It's just a catastrophic lose-lose scenario for literally everyone involved.
Moving on to Section 2, the ADR framework explained, and how we find a peaceful alternative.
This is where ADR steps in as the real hero of the story. Simply put, alternative dispute resolution strips away all that heavy legalese and the incredibly intimidating formal court process to offer a peaceful, dialogue-driven alternative. Instead of just handing all your power over to a judge in some prolonged lawsuit, ADR actually brings everyone back to the table. It completely focuses on guided dialogue, careful negotiation, and building a genuine consensus. It's all about finding a practical way forward, rather than just trying to win a legal fight.
And a process follows a surprisingly logical, structured path. Step 1, an industrial dispute pops up and tensions flare. Step 2, those normal direct negotiations completely fail. And this is the key, instead of jumping straight to a lawsuit, Step 3 triggers an ADR mechanism, usually conciliation or mediation. This step acts as a crucial bridge to Step 4, guiding everyone safely back to mutual settlement and industrial peace. It essentially catches the conflict right before it can explode into a full-blown crisis.
All right, Section 3, Conciliation versus Mediation, the heavyweight bout.
First up in the ring, we have conciliation. Now, in this process, the third party, the conciliator, is a highly active participant. They don't just sit back and passively take notes, they get right into the mix. Often operating with actual statutory backing, they assist the disputing parties and actively suggest formal, concrete ways to fix the problem. After hearing both sides out, the conciliator actually prepares a formal settlement report if things go well, or a failure report if they don't. So it gives the whole process a very strong official framework.
On the flip side, we have the mediator. A mediator takes a fundamentally different, way more hands-off approach when it comes to the final solution. They act strictly as a neutral guide. So a mediator's main job is simply to facilitate communication. Lower the temperature in the room, keep the conversation moving. They absolutely do not impose or formally recommend a settlement. Instead, they make sure the disputing parties themselves do the heavy lifting to craft a flexible, mutually acceptable solution, and it's totally voluntary.
When we put these two side by side, the distinctions are super clear. Conciliation is highly formal, structured, and legally backed. It's specifically designed for handling those heavy labor and industrial disputes. It's basically the heavier, more rigid tool in the toolbox. Mediation, on the other hand, is informal, flexible, and mostly voluntary. And because it's so adaptable, mediation handles a much wider scope, everything from complex commercial clashes and workplace drama to deep-seated family arguments.
Which brings us to Section 4, ADR in the real world. From factory floors to tech startups.
A perfect real-world example of conciliation actually happened pretty recently. In 2024, workers at Samsung's Tamil Nadu manufacturing facility demanded better wages and union recognition. The stakes here were incredibly high. But before this could spiral into a massive, highly disruptive strike that would totally halt production, state labor authorities stepped right in. They successfully used structured conciliation proceedings to force a dialogue, address those wage demands, and just cool everything down before the dispute blew up any further.
Meanwhile, over in the knowledge-based IT and startup sectors, we're seeing a completely different approach. Major tech giants like Infosys and TCS rely heavily on internal mediation and grievance redressal committees. And the reason makes perfect sense. When you're dealing with interpersonal conflicts, performance issues, or sensitive harassment claims, companies need a highly flexible process. They need a system that handles the human element while keeping sensitive business info strictly confidential, all while preserving those really crucial long-term working relationships.
Zooming out, we're also seeing massive nationwide legal shifts backing these exact methods. The Industrial Relations Code of 2020 officially emphasizes using conciliation first to prevent escalation, specifically aiming to cut down on prolonged litigation in labor courts. On top of that, the Mediation Act of 2023 is a massive step in institutionalizing and actively promoting voluntary commercial mediation across the board. The ultimate goal here for both of these laws? To significantly improve the ease of doing business by moving away from clogged-up courts and towards a much more cooperative, efficient system.
Let's look at Section 5, weighing the pros and cons, and choosing the right tool.
Because look, picking the wrong tool for a dispute can honestly be just as bad as having no tool at all. Let's look at conciliation first. The major pro here is that it gives you the heavy-hitting statutory backing you need to stop a strike or lockout right in its tracks. That makes it absolutely ideal for large-scale collective bargaining. But the cons are very real. Success still totally depends on the parties being willing to cooperate. If there's no genuine trust, the whole thing becomes incredibly procedural and bureaucratic. And honestly, the conciliator's recommendations can just be rejected at the end of the day anyway.
Now, mediation shines in entirely different areas. The huge pro is that it's an incredible mechanism for preserving long-term relationships. It's highly confidential, and because the parties themselves control the outcome, it allows for highly creative, win-win solutions that a court literally could never legally order. However, the cons? Well, there's absolutely no guaranteed settlement at the end of it. Plus, mediation can fail spectacularly or even result in a totally unfair outcome if there's a massive power imbalance between the two sides and they aren't participating with genuine good intent.
Finally, Section 6, the future of industrial peace and how it acts as a sustainable economic engine.
You see, ADR triggers this incredibly powerful positive chain reaction for the larger economy. By prioritizing preventative dispute resolution over reactive, aggressive litigation, employers and employees actually build mutual trust. They learn how to communicate. That foundational trust directly leads to industrial harmony. And as you can probably guess, when workplaces are harmonious and focused, higher productivity and sustainable economic growth naturally follow. It literally transforms a potential crisis into a powerful engine for a thriving economy.
Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the ability to resolve it. I absolutely love this quote because it perfectly hits the nail on the head for our explainer today. Conflict in a complex, super fast-paced digital workplace, that's completely inevitable. People are always going to disagree, but catastrophic fallout, the prolonged strikes, the irreparably broken trust, the years absolutely wasted in court, that is not inevitable. Not if we have the right mechanisms ready to deploy.
So as mechanisms like conciliation and mediation increasingly become the legally preferred standard for resolving issues quickly and amicably, it leaves us with one fascinating question to ponder. With these highly effective, dialogue-driven ADR tools right at our disposal, are traditional courtrooms eventually going to become completely obsolete from modern workplace conflicts? Just think about how profoundly that shift could reshape the entire future of work. Anyway, thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope you found this breakdown as fascinating as I did.